Ahoy and welcome. I am Lee the Pirate Tester, and welcome to Testing Tales, where I chat with other testers and learn all about them and their journey. And today I'm fortunate to be here with Karen Todd. Hello, Karen.
Hello, I'm Karen Todd from at Karen Test Stuff on Twitter and YouTube. Not happy to be here today.
Whoop whoop. And overall, we've been, in the grand scheme of people that I know from Twitter and stuff, is relatively recent. But we've been getting on really well, especially once we both started doing YouTube. We've both been helping each other out and chatting and so forth. So this is a sort of a two parts episode where you'll be guesting on my channel, and then I'm going to be guesting on your channel and talking about very different things, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm excited. We have two very different ideas, and so we decided to split them into two instead of trying to combine everything into one. So I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Now, the thing that I would like to know, and I imagine everyone watching this, is tell us about yourself, what you're like as a tester, and how you got to be where you are now.
Absolutely. I started long ago, back when I started college directly out of high school. This was a long time ago. I met a guy named John who over the years has become a very close friend of mine, and we stayed in contact. Over the years, I worked in a video game retail store for a long time. I worked in food service, never just one job, doing a little bit of everything, and even worked as a safety coordinator at a geotechnical engineering company for a short time. The long story. Um, but when I decided to go back to school a few years ago, my husband was very supportive. My partner really supported me in my journey to find what my heart needed to be fulfilled in work. And so I went back to school to get my associate's degree. I ended up applying to a development boot camp with my partner. We both got in, went through the boot camp together, and it just so happens that the teaching advisor for the boot camp that I was in just so happened to be my friend John from college.
That's very handy.
Yeah, so he really encouraged me and kind of took me through the process, made sure that I had the resources that I needed to be successful, and we graduated in spring of 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic.
What could go wrong with trying to find a job right at early 2020? I can't remember there being any problems with the job market then.
So, going through this boot camp, we were supposed to get placed in apprenticeships. All of those apprenticeships fell away because no one was hiring. So I took a job in real estate, working with a couple of realtor friends of mine that I absolutely love to death. They're very dear humans to me. And after about 3 months, I just looked at them both in the eyes and said, I can't do this anymore. I need to go with where my heart is. My heart is in technology. So I quit that job, started looking for a job in technology full time, went through the whole rigmarole. You know how it goes, applying after applying after applying, interview after interview, and nothing coming of it. In November, that same teaching assistant, John, reached out to me and said, Hey, one of the girls from your group that you went through LC 101 with is looking for a software test engineer at a little company called Crema. And I started researching and started researching. I didn't know what a software test engineer was. They didn't tell us any of that. They equipped us with the coding knowledge that we needed, but not the overarching product team knowledge that you gain with experience. So I didn't know anything about it, started researching, and realized this is the perfect place for me. I have so many questions about everything, about life, the universe, and everything. And now I get to ask those questions and get paid to do it. So that's kind of what brought me to where I am today.
Fantastic, and that's the thing. So many people we fall into testing, or like people who learn to code don't know that testing is a thing. That people go, I'm going to write code, cool. You know, someone's going to come along and like test that, right? What do you mean? Oh, good luck.
Yes. Someone has to be there to help and make sure that everyone is considered, not just the bias of the developer who's creating the items, but there needs to be someone who comes along with that sense of curiosity to push the boundaries. And that's what I really enjoy.
And that's the fun part for me about testing. Like, I've worked with so many developers who say like they haven't got the mindset of a tester. But there is something to me different about people who want to be a tester versus the developer, and it's not just I want to build things. But it was like I want to like we're going to build a box. Okay, well I'm going to shake the box. What happens if I do this with the box and this and this and like they're the kind of person who says do not press this button. You're like, but what happens if I push the button? Or I really really want to push that button.
What happens if you open the box? I love that.
And that's the thing. It's just yeah. It's not like you go to uni or college, you do a CS degree, you get a job as a programmer, and you do that for 20 years. No tester I have spoken to has the same one journey, which I love.
Well, and too much changes in technology for anyone to be, I mean, you can be successful for long periods in one place, but things are always changing. You have to keep up on new techniques and new exciting ideas that are out there because everything's constantly evolving. So even if you are in one place for a long time, you still have to learn.
And I imagine being so relatively new to testing, you've been learning so much. Or every so often, you're like, oh, that's a thing. That's a thing. Why has no one told me about this? And so you're still very like the enjoyment of being early on in the self discovery. Whereas I feel like a part of me at times feels like an old hand, and the other time I'm like, I still don't know about all this stuff over here. Whether it's I could be brand new or I've been doing it for 10 and a half, 11 and a half, some years. I'm in the low double digits ends. I'm just like, there's still lots about testing I don't know, and it's just nice. There is a lot you can do with it. Not, I know how Java works, and yeah, that's me set for life.
Exactly, because what happened with me with testing is I was brought on with no experience, placed almost directly on a product team, and my job gave me resources to learn from and people to make sure that I was successful, but I hit the ground running so quickly that I had kind of holes in my knowledge that over the last year or so I've been going back and kind of plugging in, okay, so I know what exploratory testing is, but what is it really? What are test charters? How do you use them? How are people successful in this? How do you quantify your work in this way? And that's kind of what I've been learning along the way,
Mm.
just shoring up my foundation a little bit so that I can grow from there.
And I didn't even get to use test charters for a long time. I was taught you make these very detailed test scripts in Excel and you have to put all the steps down. And then years later, when I learned about charters, I was like, these are so much better. Why aren't we using these more? I'm just like,
They're very useful. I especially really liked Jenna Charlton did a presentation for, was it Test Bash Home this last year,
uh,
where they did
it,
the treasure hunt.
yes. And unsurprisingly,
Oh,
people have gone, Leah, you like exploratory testing and the whole pirate thing. You like treasure maps. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm aware of Jenna's video. Yes. Their video is very good. Um, the reason I was just looking around, and I've got no idea how I'm going to edit this later on, is for people who do want to learn about exploratory testing. This is a
yes,
fantastic book. This is like the gold standard of books. Um, the
explore it. Absolutely.
yeah, and there's one bit that I always remember, and I've probably talked about it in the past, but it's a way of finding out if listeners are paying attention. Um, when she talks about testing an API and what happens if you put in a load of text. So she goes to Gutenberg Online, gets Tom Sawyer Huckleberry Finn, and pastes it in. I have that saved on Notepad at work. So whenever someone goes, this text field has no limit, I'm like, let's see about that, shall we? And so I just use that because of this book. I wouldn't have thought of that, or I would just use like a random pile of characters, but not like I'm going to use a book and stick it in and see what
Yes,
happens.
that's my favorite. I use Alice in Wonderland.
I'd be curious for everyone who does like using a book to overload something. do they have a book that what book they use and why? Like, I bet someone's gonna go, I use War and Peace because it's massive, and there's probably a point where it's just you get to a certain amount of text, it doesn't matter how much bigger it gets. I can't imagine if it was 10 words shy of War and Peace that would be allowed, but it's those last few words at the end that are too much. Who knows?
Exactly. I'd be interested to know what the viewers use as their text inputs. Do you use lorem ipsum? Do you use a book? What do you use to test the boundaries? I'd be interested to see.
Or if they've even not considered it and now we're helping them with ideas and gone with, oh, I was just smashing the keyboard and then see what happens. Because I've sometimes done that with text fields, especially to go, how many characters are there? Don't know. And I just start typing it until I watch the box turn red and go, oh, okay, that's too many characters. Why are we letting me put in
Yes.
too many characters? Dear UI developers, let's have a chat about this.
Yes, absolutely. It's just collecting information, just more information to provide to our developers, and you know, they can do with it what they will, and well, the product team in general can do with it what they will.
Hmm.
I realize I'm speaking very clearly from my own experience and not from a very wide experience. I apologize. I have only worked on product teams. I have not worked on teams with multiple testers or in waterfall ways. I've only
Look
worked
at
on
you.
agile product teams.
I would just say, look at you.
I'm spoiled.
Yeah, you last thing. I had years of waterfall, and then when you try things different, you're like, why were we not doing this sooner? And people are like, oh, like it because it's not like agile is new. It's not like it came
Mhm,
out last week. It wasn't a sudden idea during pandemic. This came out like the late '90s, I think.
mhm,
I don't know.
yeah.
Long enough that it's not new, and yet it still is some places. I don't know.
It just depends on what works for what environment, to be completely honest. I mean, some people are very happy doing their waterfall development and they're successful at it. I personally feel like Agile works a little bit better, but I think I might be biased in that just because it's the only experience I have. I really appreciate the fact that everyone's so open to speak about their experiences in the different ways so that then I can learn vicariously through other people.
And that's the thing because like whilst I've done, as I said, like 10 plus years in testing, it's mostly was only in one company, so I've got a very singular company way of seeing how things done. But that's where I like the wider testing community. I'm like, I haven't worked in games, but I know people who have, and so I can hear stories from them. I haven't worked in companies with multiple time zones before, and I can start learning about that. And yeah, that's one thing I just love about testers and doing things like this and speaking with more testers. Go, I won't know what your experience has been like, but talking with you, having it where you're able to share this with people here is fantastic.
Absolutely. I love that you're giving the space for this because I'm so curious about everything that's come before me. And I know all these people that I'm speaking on Twitter with have just a mountain of experience to share and getting little snippets here and there. So I'm not completely overwhelmed with the massive knowledge of everything is important to me because I do have ADHD. So I really enjoy the next new shiny thing. I'm not so great with follow-ups. So when I get too many options at once, I get into this paralysis
Hmm.
where I don't know where to start. And then I have to actually like sit down and make a list of priorities and go, okay, what do I need to do? What needs to be done first? What do I want to do first? And then go from there.
I do feel like I know a lot of testers with ADHD, and I don't know if it's just because the main group of people I know are testers, and therefore that will always skew my sampling, or is there something about testing that does appeal to people with ADHD, or it works for them, or what? It's just, yeah, I don't know.
It's exciting because we naturally have this stream of questions going in our mind all the time about whatever this particular sensory input is at the time. We need to address that immediately, that or we feel like we need to address that immediately. And then that leads us to new questions, which leads us to new opportunities, which leads us to other things to test. So I always have something that'll grab my attention, which is why I kind of gravitate towards it. Well, it's also really funny because when you have a couple of different people that you know personally that have ADHD, it's funny because you start to recognize it in other people who maybe haven't shared it with you. And then I tend to gravitate towards those people as friends because I feel like they will understand the way that I think. And then we can grow our relationship based on this common understanding that not the whole world gets.
Mhm.
So it's very special to me. I love it. I don't see it as any kind of drawback. I use my diagnosis to do better.
Yeah, that's the. I don't know if it's the reason why I see more of it is because I see people who are trying to share it to make it more acceptable, to remove any stigma, but also to help. I don't know if it's also to help people know how best to interact with them as well, because they might be thinking, "Oh, everyone behaves like this," and like, "Well, I'm better being interacted with and interacting with others in this way instead." Do this and it works
Hmm.
better for me. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I've had to put a thing on
Yes.
Teams to say, like, it always frustrates me when someone starts with a message that says hi, and then nothing else. I'm like, okay, what? So I've got
I
the thing that
need
says no
context.
hello. I've said to my team, if you're going to say hello, immediately follow it with something else, or I just won't reply. I'm just going to ignore you until you
Yes.
tell me what you want.
I need context, so I often add a lot of context to my messages. I'm one of those people who uses parentheses liberally.
And I know we've both seen the tweet from Danny Donovan recently, who talked about how people, often with people with ADHD, they will say something like write something and then put something in brackets afterwards because they're like, okay, I need to add more to that, but I need to separate it. And yeah,
That's exactly what brought it to mind. I loved that tweet.
is there any advice you would give to new testers, especially being a relatively new tester yourself?
Yes, I would say one of the most powerful decisions that I made as a new tester was to be vulnerable. And that includes a lot of things. That includes being vulnerable enough to, number one, admit when you don't know enough. Number two, accept your mistakes and then be able to learn from them. And do it in a way that you don't have to do it publicly. I chose to do it publicly by learning in public, by writing my blog, doing these videos, sharing what I'm learning on Twitter or LinkedIn across multiple platforms, because I specifically want to make it easier for people to come behind me.
Hmm.
I want to lower the barrier to entry because I love doing what I'm doing so much that I want to share it with everyone else. So if I can then make it easier for people to understand the information that I myself am taking in, then I feel like I've actually made some steps towards
Yeah.
this. So I would say don't be afraid to be vulnerable and learn with other people instead of trying to do it all on your own because it's absolutely impossible to do everything. So that would be my first piece of advice for sure.
Wonderful. Karen, I have had a lovely chat with you today. I hope you have enjoyed it as well.
I have. This has been really great. Thank you for making me feel so comfortable. This has been really interesting.
It's nice being able to chat with people where, especially like with Twitter, you can text back and forth, but there is something about a face to face conversation. Whilst it might not be in the words of Furler in 3D, this is this is still chatting with people. There's
Mhm.
we don't need like you don't have to be physically in person to still not get good connections with people, which is lovely. Yay for the internet making this way more possible.
It would be impossible for me because I live so far away from everyone in a literal different country. But everyone that I've been speaking with so far, except for I believe one person, has been in a completely different country from me. So I've really enjoyed the experience of getting to widen my worldview a little bit by listening to the stories of other people, yourself included.
Thank you. So, would you like to give everyone watching a reminder of where they can find you?
Absolutely. Once again, I'm Karen. You can find me on LinkedIn under Karen Todd. You can find me on Twitter at Karen Test Stuff, and that's also my YouTube handle. It's Karen Test Stuff.
Thank you very much. So, this has been Testing Tales, a name I came up with like 2 minutes before we began recording this. And look forward to seeing you in the future, people. Bye.
Absolutely. Bye.